Well, good afternoon. My name is John Christensen, and I am fortunate to be the board president for the Orange County Forum. I'd like to welcome you to our annual housing luncheon, another of our critical conversations in 2024. We have an informative and entertaining program planned for today, including a panel of industry experts who will discuss the pressing housing challenges facing our communities and the innovative solutions needed to address this important Orange County issue. But first, let me take a moment and express our gratitude to our incredible partners who help make events like this possible. First, let's begin with our title sponsors for the fourth consecutive year, UCI and UCI Health. Thank you for your ongoing, generous, and continuing support. Let's also give a big thank you to this afternoon's presenting sponsors, Bank of America and National Corps. Thank you both for your valued support in making today's event possible. Today's promotional sponsor is Pacific West Association of Realtors, and there we are. Thank you, guys. And our event partner is the Urban Land Institute. There we go. Appreciate both of you and the essential role that you played in bringing this event to everyone today. And finally, let me acknowledge all of our OC Forum ongoing sponsors. It's your continued and generous support that allows us to host great programs like today. I'm blessed to be on a board that has some very talented and dedicated people who are very generous with their time and their talent, and they help make these types of events happen. So that's always our favorite time at these events. I'm going to ask my fellow board members to please stand and be recognized. Board members, don't make me call you out. There we go. Awesome. You know, I also understand we have some elected officials and their representatives in the audience today. I want to ask you to please rise so we can thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. Any elected officials? There we go. Awesome. And finally, we must thank all of you for being here in attendance today. Thanks for joining us. Your presence and engagement are what make our events truly special. Now, before we start our panel discussion, I'd like to invite up Chuck Liu to the stage from one of our presenting sponsors, Bank of America, for some brief remarks. Chuck.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, OC Forum, for giving me the opportunity to tackle my stage fright this afternoon. I should be good at doing this by now because I've been doing it for quite some time, but every time feels like the first time. So I had the opportunity to meet some of you guys this morning or this afternoon. Just want to give you a little background about myself. My name is Chuck Liu. I am the community lending market leader for the Southern California market. And what that means is I manage our community lending loan officers from LA, Orange County, Inland Empire, down to San Diego. And my folks predominantly focus on our first-time home buyers, our multicultural borrowers, and our low moderate income clients. So it's our priority to help these clients get into their home. And that's why we're all here today, right? So a little bit more about Bank of America is in the Orange County community, we have 78 financial centers that serve the community. We have over 2,000 teammates that help financial lives better every day with our clients. And since 2019, we have volunteered over 204,000 hours in the community here in Orange County. And we've been in Thank you. And we've been in the community since 1925. So next year, it's going to be our 100th year in our Orange County community. So thank you all for the support here at in Orange County. Really what I want to just share this morning is around our Bank of America community home ownership commitment. We understand that owning a home is a key to long-term stability, financial stability, generational wealth for our families. So in 2019, we launched our community home ownership commitment This is a $15 billion commitment that we have committed to help individuals and their families to get into their own homes. And as with all our home buyers, first-time buyers, we know that there are barriers, right? Most common barriers, down payment, closing costs, credit challenges. And that's what we're trying to help with our community, is to offer solutions to these barriers through our community homeownership commitment. So the first solution that we try to address is having a mortgage program that offers as little as 3% down, that have very competitive rates and a reduced MI. And this is a conventional loan that we can underwrite up to 50% debt to income. Second, we have a down payment grant of up to $10,000 for eligible borrowers. And this $10,000 is a grant. It's free money. I don't know who doesn't like free money, because I would volunteer for free money myself. So that's our down payment grant. And thirdly, we have our America's Home grant. This is another grant to help our borrowers with closing costs. This is $7,500 to help with our borrowers for non-recurring closing costs like title, things like that. Okay, so a total of $17,500 in grant money that the client doesn't have to pay back for our would-be home borrowers. And one additional thing that we're very proud of at Bank of America is that we're also trying to increase access to safe and I forget the word, let me look at my notes, safe and affordable housing for our community. We have made a philanthropic investment of almost $200,000 so far this year. So those are some of the things that we're doing for the community. We're definitely dedicated to affordable lending, and through our network of specialized loan officers, I know that we're able to help you, your clients, and just help our entire community as a whole to get into home ownership. More than just the financial support that we provide our clients, we also provide the education. We work with partners like NeighborWorks Orange County, Orange County Community Housing Corporation, or Affordable Housing Clearinghouse. We work with these home buyer educators to help clients get more ready to get into their own home. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do, and we've been very successful so far with our community home ownership commitment. So far we have put, since the launch of the program, we have put over 40,000 families into their home homes. So I think that's something that we're very proud of here at Bank of America. And please, we have some flyers out there about our program. Please stop by, grab a few. Don't just grab one. All right, grab a few. Please share, because we can't communicate enough of the things that we're doing, what we're trying to do for the community, and get everybody into homes. And again, thank you guys all for your time this afternoon. I know I'm between you and dessert, so please, thank you and have a wonderful day. I'm looking forward to the rest of the agenda here. Thank you.
Well, if we take nothing else away from today, we'll take away Bank of America and free money. Even this English major understands that that's a good thing. All right, well, I'm super honored to introduce our next guest speaker. California State Treasurer Fiona Ma first was elected in 2018 with more votes than any other treasurer in the state's history. She was then reelected in 2022. Treasurer Ma is the first woman of color and the first certified public accountant to hold the position of California State Treasurer. As California's primary banker, she oversees the management of more than $3 trillion in payments annually, an investment portfolio exceeding $124 billion, and supervises $93 billion in bonds, facilitating essential infrastructure financing, including schools, clean energy projects, and housing. Before becoming treasurer, Fiona served on the California Board of Equalization from 2015 to 2019. She has a long history of public service, having held positions in the California State Assembly, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and is a licensed CPA, and we are very honored to have her with us this afternoon. Please join me in giving a warm Orange County Forum welcome to California State Treasurer Fiona Ma.
Thank you so much, John. It's always an honor to be back in Orange County because everybody wants to move to Orange County, or at least the Asians want to move to Orange County. And then those that want affordable housing, they're moving to the fastest growing region, which is the San Bernardino County. So I spent a lot of time here as well as in San Bernardino. So I know you have a great panel of speakers who are going to come up, experts that are going to talk about different issues, challenges, opportunities affecting our housing community. So I think I'm just going to give a brief overview of perhaps why I am standing here and why I have such a keen interest in our affordable and all types of housing here in California. So growing up, I am the oldest child of immigrant parents. When I was born, my brother was born, and my sister, my dad opened up a savings account and bought dividend reinvestment stocks for us. And due to compounding interest and dividends and reinvestments, by the time I finished college at a private school, the Rochester Institute of Technology, I had no debt. And I had extra money where I could put it toward higher education, to start a business, or to buy a house. And we had moved then to San Francisco, and so I decided to buy a 2-unit building in the upper market area in San Francisco. So I had one tenant. He paid about $700 at the time, and after 10 years, I really couldn't raise the rent very much. And when I sold my house, I had to sell it as is, because I really didn't have the money to put a new roof on and build, bathrooms and all the things that you're supposed to do when you're selling a house, right? So it was as is. The buyer bought it as is, knocked it down, and built up another, beautiful 2-unit building. So that was my first experience about home ownership and rent control. And then one of these don't know about this. But then I started my professional career with Ernst & Whinney, which became Ernst & Young, specializing in real estate taxation. I stayed 5 years, and after that, I decided to quit because there were really no women or people of color that looked like me in leadership, so I didn't think I would have those opportunities. So I quit and started my own practice, and that was when I went out networking with different groups. I became the president of a small business association, which is still my passion, still here today. And then I also served on the Assessment Appeals Board. Because I had my own practice, I couldn't serve full time, so I served as an alternate on both residential and commercial tax appeal cases. I also got a job with Senator John Burton. Some of you may know and remember John Burton, but he was always the fighter for those that don't have as much. And so our constituents were a lot of homeless folks, single moms, foster youth, and our job was to try to, figure out how we can help them. So I learned a lot about what it's like to be homeless. And if this was a homeless forum, I would tell you some of the things that I believe have, lead to homelessness and how we need to really get out of it. But today is not a homeless forum. Then I got elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Excuse me, I'm eating risotto. It's like getting stuck in my... Don't worry, we don't have to send anyone from UCI Alpha Health. So then I got elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and one of my friends back then, Jeff Burham, he founded National Core. And we had met through friends, and he said, "Hey, I'd like you to join my board." And I said, "Well, I have no idea about affordable housing." I just moved, to California, so I don't know. And he said, okay, that's okay. As long as you don't vote against me, you can stay. So I served for 4 years and really understood the cross-section or the intersection of federal tax policies with local government, with the state bonds and the tax credit, and how it is so complicated to build these affordable housing projects. But I really didn't think that much of it, right, Lorraine and Mike? We would go and we would see these great projects and go, wow, I'd like to live in this. And then we'd have all these, wraparound services for the tenants, and they were all like, very, very excited, those families and those that would live in these projects. And then in San Francisco, as many of you know, we have very, very dense housing. So there were a lot of illegal ADUs, people creating granny flats or rentals, families lived together. We paved over all of our lawns, so we have a lot of cement so people can park their cars. And back then they weren't legal. And so, if we got caught, we would have to rip it out and, kind of start again. Then we also had a lot of tenancies in common because we had a large LGBT community, and they really wanted to own property and start building equity. So that TIC movement really ramped up, as well as the live-work lofts. Then technology, the tech companies moved in after we passed our payroll tax exemption, because San Francisco back then was the only city and county that had a payroll tax. So none of the tech or biotech companies would locate in San Francisco. That's why they're in Emeryville, South San Francisco, Berkeley, right? There is a reason tax policies and incentives do play a part in terms of where companies go. And then when Mayor Ed Lee signed the bill in 2012, all the tech companies came to San Francisco, and we started building, right, all of those high rises to accommodate our new workers. Then I got elected to the state assembly in 2006 to 2012. I served under 2 governors, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jerry Brown. I had 3 speakers at the time, Fabian Nunez, Karen Bath, as well as John Perez. And we faced the Great Recession. So it wasn't that much fun. It was a lot of chaos back then. And I did sit on the housing committee because I thought it would be juicy and fun. But honestly, it was more about RV parks, their owners, and the tenants. And they would come with these big, yellow buttons that they would wear, trying to save their RV parks. So I got off of that very quickly. And back then, we really were about local control. We wanted the local government to decide, all types of policies. However, things have changed because of NIMBYs or cost of construction and land use policies, that now the state has really done a lot more in terms of policies at the state level, trying to dictate to local governments to meet their RHNA numbers. And I'm sure some of my fellow speakers will be talking about that. Then I got elected to the Board of Equalization. And back then, we heard tax appeals, as well as overseeing the assessors and the Assessment Appeals Board. So kind of sometimes your life comes back around. I sat on the Assessment Appeals Board, and now I'm like regulating them. And so I learned a lot about, the assessors. And I know that some of the assessors are trying to tax more, or trying to figure out how to tax more. Don't really understand that. Is anyone from the assessor's office? No. Okay. Because I think the assessor's office is really about making sure all of the properties are enrolled properly, right? And, if there's any problems, transfers, sales, all of that. But their job is not really to tax or create tax policy. But that's, I think, what they're doing. And I don't know why, because people don't like the tax collector. And they sometimes don't like the assessor, right? And so as long as you're doing a good job and, making sure when you sell property or it's changing hands that everything goes smoothly, I think that's the assessor's job, which is why I never wanted to be the assessor. I got offered that job in San Francisco, and I was like, that's kind of boring. It should be a boring job, I think. Anyway, So then in 2018, I got elected as state treasurer of the fifth largest economy. My father is finally proud of me and not bugging me to go back and do taxes. You may see that after my name, I am still a CPA, even though I have not done a tax return since 2002. I only do pro bono work, mostly for nonprofits, but he always reminds me that if this doesn't work out, I should go back and be an accountant. And for those of you who are CPA, it's not easy to get your license activated once you retire, so I just do my 80 hours every 2 years. But one of the fun things that I do is I also chair CIDLAC and TCAC, so I oversee the tax credits and the bonds that goes toward subsidizing affordable housing. So in theory, all the developers, they start at the local level, then they go and get some federal tax incentives, and then when they're all done and ready to break ground, they come to my office, and that's where I'm able to give those tax credit and bonds. And when I first took over the treasurer's office back in 2018, the credit side, tax credit side was doing pretty good, but we weren't really competitive on our bond side. And so I had 3 people in my office that couldn't even do a spreadsheet properly. So that was a problem. And then when Gavin Newsom, the governor, gave us $500 million of state low-income housing tax credits, all of a sudden the bonds were competitive. And, I looked at my people and they didn't do a carry forward, the spreadsheets weren't done right. And so it became a huge problem, and I had to, really revamp that agency during COVID, by the way, where we received 2 rounds of federal disaster tax credits to help those that were devastated by fires, to help them rebuild faster. And those 2 years were during COVID as well. And I am proud of my team now. I think any of you who works with my tax credit or bond committee, hopefully you will find them to be very efficient, effective, constituent-oriented, and we really want to be part of the solution and not be a problem, which is what I think the treasurer's office used to, they would, if you didn't check the box, they would kick you out of the system and make you reapply again. We do not do that anymore. We bend over backwards to give supplementals, to give extension requests, whatever reason that developers come to us, or cities, special districts. We really do try to work with them. We also built our first student affordable housing project at the Santa Rosa Community College before the pandemic. It's 352 beds, and it went really well, and we were excited to do more at state universities and community colleges, but unfortunately now we have a deficit, so those projects are going to be on hold. But thanks to Assemblymember McCarty, he did pass a bill during the pandemic saying that when we have money, we are going to start building at UC, CSU, and community college sites. So if any of you have any land, I know Vanguard, I talked to Vanguard University, they have some land, UCI may have some land, any of your community colleges, please let me know, because once we get back on better financial footing, we will be actively trying to do that. We also created different pools, one for BIPOC developers, Black, Indigenous, people of color. We heard a lot of complaints that many of these projects are in places where the developers don't look like the community. And so now we have a very active BIPOC developers who are, learning, this very, very complicated system, but definitely increasing. I also issue the bonds for CalVet. So any veteran who wants to buy a home, we have very great rates. The loan is not based on FICO scores, and it's really based on the ability for veterans to pay back that loan. And so we do have more money in that program. It doesn't have to be a first-time home buyer. It could be their second home or their third home. Maybe they're downsizing. So CalVet home loan programs. I also sit on the California Housing Finance Authority, CalHFA, And we also have many programs to help first-time home buyers, down payment assistance, etc. I'm sure people will talk about that. And then I issued all the bonds for the No Place Like Home bonds. That was $2 billion that went to housing for homeless or formerly homeless individuals with complete wraparound services. And that program was very successful, which led to our Dream for All program. I fought to do the, to bring that program under my office. So we worked with, I'm slipping the name of the agency that won the RFI for the Dream for All program. But essentially, we gave out 2 rounds of free down payment assistance up to 20% of the value of the home to first-time home buyers. That was the first tranche, and the realtors were really good because they lined everybody up, and that program opened and closed in a week. So then this past round is to first-time home buyers whose parents don't own a home. So that is a little more difficult, right, to qualify these folks. But it is super, super popular. Everyone's asking when we're going to bring it back and offer this program again. And that program, we get paid back at the state once the homeowner sells their property or refinances it for the second time. So it's a win-win. It doesn't cost anything to the homeowner, and the state's going to have additional revolving funds so that other homeowners, potential homeowners, can be able to access it. So again, once we get out of our deficit position, we will be, I think, looking into, putting more money into that program. And then ADUs are finally legal. Yay! And so CalHFA gave 2 rounds of $40,000 grants to homeowners. Grants means free money, and it went very, very quickly. But again, very popular, so we're hoping to get back to that once we do better financially. So how are we going to do better financially? Well, we need to make sure that we are attracting high-quality jobs and keeping those high-quality jobs here in California. People always say, oh, people are moving to Texas or Florida. Cheaper is not always better, as we know. And young people don't necessarily want to move to Texas or Florida if they have a choice. But again, it goes back to housing. If there is no housing, it is not affordable. People have to sit in their car and drive for hours. After a while, they have to make a quality of life decision. So we need to keep high-paying jobs here and businesses that are making money, because 90% of our general fund depends on personal income tax and corporate income tax. So if these companies, tech companies, are laying off workers, they're all moving, no stock options, no bonuses, people aren't trading, capital gains. How can you buy and sell any real estate if there's no insurance? So we need insurance to come back. We are working on it. Hopefully, beginning of next year, we'll start to get some individuals that had to go into the FAIR plan. We will be able to get them out of the FAIR plan and bring back more insurance companies back here to California. I mean, it's just very complicated. One thing leads to another. And then, so personal income tax, corporate income tax, and then sales taxes. So the reason we did so well during the pandemic is everyone was stuck here. Nobody went anywhere. We spent all of our money here. We ordered stuff. We bought RVs and boats and trucks and cars because, right, we didn't have to pay it back then. So everyone was buying everything. And so our sales taxes were really high, doing well. And it's still doing well, the sales taxes. But it is really our personal income tax that drives a lot of our economy. If we lose the Elon Musk, people like that, they pay a lot of taxes. Hollywood, we had a 6-month actor and writer strike. You can't necessarily turn on and off productions, right? They all decided to go to other places because they didn't know when we were going to be done with our strike. And now Hollywood has still not come back. And so when Tom Cruise is making these fancy movies, making billions of dollars, he's not paying taxes here necessarily in California. So we have to bring Hollywood back. And that means creating more incentives to compete with the other states. Our higher education institutions are still some of the best. The UCs, the 11 of them are still in the top, 10 in the nation. But if you go to a UC, you only get your first year's lodging, provided for. So if you're going to stay there for 2, 3, 4 years, you got to go fend for yourself and go find housing. So I always say, please, investors, go build housing around our UC or CSUs especially. Then California is the only place in the world that has invested so much in stem cell research. We passed 2 initiatives. I think it's about $6 billion, if I recall. And so all the best and the brightest scientists, researchers, doctors want to come to our research institutions. Most of them are, the UCs or, the Loma Lindas. Where are they going to live, right? So that is also a problem. And so housing has to be part of the solution if we are going to continue to be the 5th largest economy, to continue to attract more businesses and different industries here to California. And I thank all of you for being here today, for contributing and doing all we can to continue to make our state the Golden State. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great lunch.
You, Treasurer Ma. Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next person. He's a moderator for today. We're super fortunate to have him here in that role. His impact has shaped industries and communities alike around Orange County. He's the founder and principal of Term 360 and brings more than 4 decades of expertise as an award-winning journalist, a media entrepreneur, and a corporate communications executive. His work spans advising top executives in organizations, including his current role in guiding the redevelopment of the recently approved $3 billion mixed-use urban village in Santa Ana. A dedicated community champion, he has served on the Orange County Business Council for 14 years and continues to serve on the board of the Los Angeles Business Council. Please join me in giving a warm OC Forum welcome to my dear friend and today's moderator, Mr. Steve Churm.
Thank you. I don't know if they're going to remove this now or maybe after a couple of opening comments, but I'll just be brief. Hello, everyone, and welcome and thank you for being here today. I am Steve Churm. What was not shared is that I know the forum has a long history with the Angels here in Orange County. And when it comes to American League Baseball, and I love baseball, I am an Angel fan. But I am a lifelong, tried and true Dodger fan. So let's go Dodgers, all right? All right. I'm delighted to return to the OC Forum stage today to moderate the 2024 Annual Housing Program. I'm honored every time I come back because I truly believe the Forum, with its history, the individuals it brings to the stage, the people that are attracted to come on a Friday, as pretty as this Friday is, to sit inside this room, this public affairs program matters. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me today. For many of us, and I think I speak for almost everyone I see here in this room, housing and the critical shortage of attainable housing for all incomes in our community is central to what we do and experience every single day. This is not a topic that is reserved for builders or those that issue loans and so forth. It impacts every single individual in here. And this is why I'm excited to be here today, to look forward to helping moderate a robust discussion with 3 leading experts on the challenges and opportunities we face in addressing our collective issue of housing in this state. It is why the OC Forum has returned to this topic year after year to at least push it forward and get us thinking. We could stay here until tomorrow morning and not begin to cover all of the angles, the nuances, and the facets of this topic. But at least we're going to take an attempt again today to talk about some things that are important and leave thinking about how we can all make a difference. So with that, I would like to bring to the stage our three experts today. Their very robust and complete sort of backgrounds are in the one sheet that was at your place, so I will not go through all of that. But I'd like to bring them up and have you recognize them. The very first, and she is familiar to those of you who have come to this housing event before, Alexa Washburn, the Chief Development Officer of National Core, one of the nation's leading nonprofit affordable housing developers. Please welcome Alexa.
All right, terrific. Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Balsamo, Senior Vice President, Governmental Relations for Rancho Mission Viejo, the highly recognized master plan community in South Orange County. And Mike brings with him a legacy of statewide leadership in the housing market. Please welcome Mike. And finally, anchoring today's panel, Dr. Edward Caulson, Professor of Economics and Public Policy and Director of the Center for Real Estate, Paul Mirage School of Business at the University of California, Irvine, a university that today is at the center of many of the conversations about California's housing shortage. Please welcome Dr. Caulson and our entire panel. I think they're going to remove this now. Everybody has water. We each have a microphone. So as they remove this, we're going to jump in just so we can maximize the time we do have. And I must say that it's really important, while we have three experts up here, it is as much about you. So I hope you're thinking about some questions you would like to ask the panel or each one of these individuals when we get to that point in the program. So I'll let them take this. But let's see if we can just sort of persevere here and move through this. So, as I was saying, 1970 was sort of a key benchmark year for us. And we talked about household ownership, or the half was in reach for more than half the households. But now, nearly a half century later, my question to the three of you is, why haven't policymakers, elected officials, government agencies, community stakeholders, grassroots housing advocates, or frankly voters, been able to solve California's housing crisis, or at least make some sort of dent in the shortage here in arguably the most dynamic and economically powerful state in the union? And I'm going to start with you, Professor, at the end, okay? And I know we could spend a lot of time just on this question, but just give us a couple of high-level thoughts about why we are here a half century later still in this situation.
Do I have to keep it short? So embedded in your question were two things.
Okay.
In 1970, everything was fine. But by 1975, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember 1975. I was just a small child then. But in 1975, California prices blew up all of a sudden. And it was like the rest of the country woke up and decided that sunshine was a really great thing to have. And that was it. It was not an interest rate policy. It was nothing except a change in taste that caused California prices to start to deviate. And from that moment on, we've had that increased deviation of California house prices from the rest of the country. And the second thing you said was at the end of the question, and I can't quote you exactly, but it was like California is really prosperous. And so what that means is that there's going to be tremendous demand for living here, and there's going to be tremendous income for people to be able to buy houses here. And that just exacerbates the problem because we have, in addition to that, a sclerotic housing supply system, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But housing supply is the key to all of this. And I'll just say one more thing and then I'll stop. A professor is always happy to profess. we heard a lot about housing subsidies from the government, from Bank of America. That's great. I'm all in favor of helping out less fortunate people. But if you don't have supply responding to that increased demand, it's the same, a lot more dollars are going to be chasing exactly the same housing stock. And all it's going to do is cause prices to rise and make the problem worse. So housing supply is the key to all of that.
So we've heard that sunshine is one of those elements that's driving this. Mike, what would you add to that in terms of, you have a long history in this field, this industry. What are your thoughts about why we are still here a half century later?
Well, the professor nailed it on demand, being, supply and demand being the primary issue. I think there's a lot of gigantic factors that drive us to a low supply scenario, but I think many Californians, their home is their number one financial asset. Many Californians, probably 70%, have a 3% interest rate. Right now, there's no incentive to move. And they protect what they have, and they fear when more housing comes, it's going to change their quality of life. So they get to a mode of not wanting any more. They elect the local elected officials, the city council people, the board of supervisors, who then are in the unenviable task of having to approve housing, but face the end of their political career potentially. So you've got this sort of structural problem in terms of how we entitle and approve housing in the state that is perplexing. And then when you look at the state of California on the whole, it's a beautiful place, great natural resources. And I think everybody in this room is well-intentioned. Everybody really would like to solve the housing policy crisis, including people in the state of California. But you've got so many special interests that are coming at them from whatever their niche issue is, that I genuinely believe that the will is not there to do what needs to be done to get more supply across. Right now in California, roughly 6% of the land is developed. That's it. I mean, if you fly from here to Sacramento, as I do 5 or 6 times a year, you'll see just how much land is out there. But yet we've taken it out of play. I mean, and I don't know how that is wise. I mean, I think infill development, we're all striving for that too, but making that the only focus is misplaced. It's significantly more expensive. You can't get public support to do it. You have infrastructure challenges there. So we need to have some level of greenfield. Then you look to the greenfield, our state recently has listed the burrowing owl and the crotch bumblebee as threatened or endangered species. What these things are doing, those animals, or whatever you want to call them, are pervasive across California. So what they're saying is, we don't really want any more growth. We're going to list these species, and it's up to you folks to sort that out. I think again, labor is another factor, and I'll try not to go on too much longer, Steve, but generally speaking, to get more housing or to get affordable housing, the state orthodoxy is, well, let's make it prevailing wage, which is directly contradictory to having affordable housing. That's another issue where there's a willful decision to not solve the problem. I think on the climate side, I believe there needs to be a gradual move toward a more carbon reduced community, but we're going full tilt and we're damaging our energy system, and I can't get into all the details. Caltrans states on their website that they don't want to add any capacity to the state system. These kinds of things there's no accident that we don't have more housing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So I'll stop there.
Thank you for laying that out, Mike. Alexa, you're just sort of idling over here. You want to add a couple of thoughts to the question?
Yeah, I will. I'll build from what Mike said, is that this is a persistent problem because it's so complex. It's a combination of the economic, the political, and the regulatory factors that have evolved since the 1970s. And so let's take, for example, environmental and regulatory barriers. We always talk about CEQA every time we're in this room, right? The California Environmental Quality Act, which was actually enacted in 1970. And, the intent, right, was to protect the environment, but it has evolved since it was enacted in 1970 and is now being used to delay development or worse, stop development altogether, right? And that adds time and cost to producing housing. Let's take construction costs have risen drastically. We've got labor shortages. We have the rise of materials, the cost of materials. We have a very complex building code. All of that in combination makes construction here in California expensive, right? Which then we can't provide affordable housing. And then we get to the land use barriers. Much of the area in California has very strict zoning for single-family residential. And so that limits the types of housing you can build, it limits the density that you can build at. And so in high-demand areas, then we cannot supply the amount of housing that's needed because of these restricted zoning. So it's, I wish we could we could point to one factor because it would be an easier solution. And that's what it is. We're trying to balance all of these interests. We're trying to balance environmental interests, political interests, economic interests with social interests, and there isn't compromise, and we cannot come to a consensus.
So we've set the table here. You understand the history, how we sort of arrived here, and what is still tangling and creating all kinds of headwinds for us trying to resolve this. Let's go a little more specific, and I'm going to come right back to you, Alexa, because I'm going to ask you, we know that National Corps has been a leader in affordable housing development and recognized across California, if not across the country, for what it's done. Right here in Orange County, there are 9 National Corps projects or communities open, 4 more in the pipeline. So clearly, National Corps is a leader in this area. But what sort of solutions, ideas have you seen elsewhere in California or outside of California that you're looking at to bring to Orange County to create more impactful communities that are affordable?
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity for Orange County to scale its workforce housing initiatives. And specifically, some examples of that are employer-based programs, right? We're job rich here in Orange County. I think all of us are familiar with the Silicon Valley and Google and Facebook, and they have actually implemented built housing on their campuses, or they have employer subsidy programs where they offer rental subsidies to their workforce, or they have master leases in apartment home communities that are nearby their campuses. We could translate that here in Orange County, not only to the major employers, but I think there's also an opportunity where we have school districts, for example, right, that are starting to inventory their land, starting to look at what campuses are declining in terms of their student populations, and maybe they can consolidate their schools. Where do they have surplus land? And so we are starting to work with school districts and looking for opportunities on their land to provide workforce housing, affordable housing for their teachers, for their service workers. This can translate to even the healthcare industry, right? And I'd say healthcare is participating in affordable housing on a couple different fronts. We see the healthcare industry has recognized that being homeless is not healthy, and so that it is housing is a social determinant of health, and so they're investing in housing, particularly permanent supportive housing for those that are homeless or experiencing homelessness. But then on the other spectrum, there's an opportunity for healthcare to also invest in housing for their workforce as well. So, and then I'll just touch a little bit on the finance side. I do also think there's an opportunity here in Orange County to scale our social impact investment, our social impact bonds. And I can say that was critical for National Core to increase our pipeline and deliver more affordable housing units. Back in 2022, we issued a $100 million social bond. And since then, what we've been doing is working to build the capacity with other nonprofit affordable housing developers to first, you got to get your S&P rating, so working with them to get an AA plus S&P rating, but then also build their capacity to issue their own social bonds to provide the much needed capital to build affordable housing. So I have many more that I could touch on, but those are a few that come to mind.
It's interesting. You're talking about infill opportunities that exist. You talk about schools. I'm going to turn to you, Mike, and talk about one of the, I think, most interesting, successful, and important greenfield projects, and that's Rancho Mission Viejo, which you are very involved with, obviously. How do you go about, in your role and the company broadly, balancing growth and sustainability while ensuring housing remains affordable and accessible for your entire range of potential buyers?
Thanks, Steve. Well, we're very intentional about the plan, the ranch plan, which was approved in 2004, if you can believe that, 20 years ago now. We're about 5,000 homes into the 14,000 unit plan. And we have decided early on that we would have the complete mix of housing types within Rancho Mission Viejo. And that includes affordable housing. It includes what we call attainable first-time home buyer product. We've got a significant amount of that in the community. We have age-qualified housing, which is for about 30% of all the homes we're building are designed for people that are 55 and older, and many of those are single-level floor plans, which is pretty unique in Orange County. Amazing views there. And we're beginning to move into what we call move-up product now as we get into a little more of the elevated area of our current village, which is Rienda, a special place. But I think what we always go back to is the commitment the family made 20 years ago, which is 75% of the land will be conserved permanently as open space. We provide amazing trail systems, parks, community centers, swimming pools. We work really hard with our local agencies, our school district. We built one school, we're starting another one next year, 2 fire stations so far. So it's the full complement of what you need to build community, including employment, which more of that will be coming down the road. But I think we keep emphasizing, as the plan evolves, what that early commitment was in terms of the open space, and it's a contiguous area, roughly 20,000 acres. That's pretty amazing in South Orange County. We have to do annual reporting to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and all the other regulatory agencies about the species, and they are thriving, both the oak trees and sycamores and any number of listed species that live on the ranch. So number one is reminding everybody about that commitment that was made early on. I think beyond that, we try to do another number of other sustainability initiatives. We have the Ranch Ride program, which is a shuttle service throughout the community. We received state legislation for a neighborhood electric vehicle program, which means that you can have an NEV at your home and use it on the public streets in the community. Pretty unique in California. We have a water quality program. We're partnering with Santa Margarita Water District. This is really innovative, but all of the wastewater from the community gets treated, gets put then in a reservoir that we partnered with the district on, 5,000 acre-foot reservoir, really the only reservoir that's been built in California in the last 20 or 30 years. That water it not only does it irrigate all the landscaping in the community and in South County, it also will be, the plan is to infiltrate it back into the ground and then harvest it again for domestic water use. So that's a complicated kind of circle, but the whole point of it is the water never gets to the ocean. We're fully compact and circular in how we operate the water in the community. Those are just a few of the examples, but we're always working real hard. The homes are energy efficient. We have a robust wildfire mitigation program in the community. We're a fire-safe community, and that's a whole other topic for another event, probably.
Just a quick follow-up before I go to Ed with the next question. Back to you, Mike. Do you find buyers coming in asking about some of those features? In other words, does that make a difference in whether they wind up investing and buying because you are doing some of those things?
Well, I think maybe it gives them extra motivation. I'll be honest, there's so little new housing available in Orange County that the demand is there on the natural, Steve, so I don't want to be phony here, but we also have in our visitor center, which is called Ranch Camp, if anybody's been there, it's about 9 acres, but we have an entire building that's dedicated to the sustainability initiatives of the community, where people can, if that's what they're into, they can learn about it. I think we're seeing with the younger buyers, more interest in that. Also, they're more comfortable with a all-electric home, where an older, more mature buyer, I think, is still expecting that natural gas appliances and those opportunities are going to be in the home, and that puts us in a challenging situation with the state in terms of still using natural gas, which we have in the community. So those are a few examples for you.
Terrific. Thanks, Mike. Ed, just yesterday in this hotel, in the ballroom next door, your colleagues at Cal State Fullerton in their annual economic forecast said housing affordability, particularly among first-time buyers, is at a record low. In fact, they said 14% can afford to buy a median-priced home. These are first-time buyers. From your perspective at UCI's Center for Real Estate, what are the key economic factors impacting housing affordability in Orange County, and how can local stakeholders work together to mitigate these challenges, and why is it not happening fast enough?
Wow.
Well, that's why you're anchoring this, all right? That's why you're the professor.
Okay, I guess I first want to know what their definition of affordability is, because I think the standard definition of affordability does not apply to California, precisely because of the reasons I talked about in my first response, which is that when you buy a house or rent an apartment in California, you're not just renting the apartment, you're renting the sunshine, you're renting the shoreline, you're renting access to Disneyland. You're getting all kinds of amenities that you don't get in Wichita. Nothing
Anybody from Wichita? Okay, anybody?
But it's a flat, featureless plain with no Disneyland. So that's part of it. But even beyond that, of course, it's unaffordable at the present time because we have an interest rate problem. We have mortgage lock. There's people not willing to sell their current property, which because it's used is probably a little bit more affordable. Maybe it's people not selling their starter homes and moving up because they don't want to trade in their low-priced mortgage for a high-priced mortgage. We know this is a phenomenon. I don't know how much that contributes to the housing supply problem. We would expect in the coming year with future interest rate cuts, we hope. I've been predicting that long before it actually happened, but that's another conversation. But with those interest rate cuts, we'll see mortgage rates come down, hopefully, and we'll get some more affordability back. You asked the second part of your question, and you always ask me the longest questions. What can state and what can local policymakers do? I think Orange County faces a particularly difficult set of problems because it's 50 separate cities, all of which are kind of about the same size.
34.
34, thank you. I'm glad you know.
I graduated from UCI, by the way.
We taught him one thing, apparently, which I didn't know. It's 34. If you're talking about Los Angeles can kind of internalize things. It's the straw that stirs the drink. It can solve, if it wanted to, Los Angeles by itself could solve the Los Angeles County affordability problem. I mean, it doesn't want to, but it could because it has the capacity to do that. In Orange County, there's two problems. One is that none of the actors are big enough to solve it by themselves. And there's kind of a public goods / free rider problem. I mean, Huntington Beach will think, oh, we won't do our housing element. And again, nothing against Huntington Beach, but they don't want to solve their housing element problem, and they think that, adjoining communities can do it just as well as they can, and they can free ride off of that, of other places' efforts. And I think that's a big problem for Orange County generally. Did I miss any part of your question?
No, it was excellent.
Okay.
It was excellent, Professor. Thank you very much. And this is a reminder that I have one more question here from the stage, and then going to turn to the audience. So I hope you're thinking about some questions for our panelists here. But Alexa, I'm going to come back to you on this. Housing insecurity affects a wide range of populations in Orange County, from low income to really young professionals, even middle income families, right? And that is such an important cohort when you think about the major employers that are here. You think about the Edwards Life Sciences. You think about the Andrel Defense. You think about the City of Hopes. You think about UCI's brand new medical center here, all needing to bring in skilled talent, generally younger, generally at lower wages, and they're having to drive long distances. So that's what we're talking about, the housing insecurity that's here, okay? How can government, private developers, and nonprofits work together better to create a more secure housing future? Any thoughts on that?
We need more incentives. No, we really do. I mean, in terms of incentivizing the private market, more tax credits. Can we reduce permitting fees? Can we streamline the time it takes to get your permits? I mean, there's a lot of tools that affordable housing developers can use now, but not necessarily translate over onto the market rate side. I'd like to see more public-private partnerships. So we've had some great relationships with, like, Shop Off, for example, where, they may not like this, where they are seeing more and more cities requiring inclusionary housing so that we can increase the diversity and the affordability levels within new development. And we talk about that, the market rate developers, like, we don't even, what we do is hard enough, but let alone the brain damage with affordable housing financing. And so there's really an opportunity for partnerships there to where, the nonprofits and the affordable housing developers can work with the market rate developers to, take care of that affordable housing obligation for them. And then we're delivering a diversity of housing within a community at various, affordability levels.
Ed, I'm going to turn to you, and then I'll leave the final response to Mike. Any thoughts about how these various stakeholders can work together better, and what needs to change to create some real progress and positive outcomes?
Yeah, that's another tough question, although it's much shorter than the first two. I don't know. I mean, it really needs a change in attitude from people that they shouldn't be so fearful of development in their immediate neighborhoods. If we give, it's a question of property rights, actually, isn't it? Because there's a piece of vacant land, and all the neighbors think they have property rights associated with that neighboring land, and they get to decide what to do with that. And that's not very good thinking, actually. I mean, at the extreme, and I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything, but that's the kind of thinking that leads to racial covenants, right? That we have power over who gets to be our neighbor. And, so you just have to there has to be a change in the NIMBYist attitude. And you see it changing. I mean, I see lots of YIMBY stuff on social media, and so maybe attitudes are changing, but people are still going to be very protective of their neighborhoods. And it's just a question of how much property rights, how much say do people get in who their neighbors are? And how we bring that about, I don't know, but that's what needs to happen, I think.
Terrific. Mike, this is right in your wheelhouse. You're very instrumental in bringing stakeholders together, sometimes those on very opposite ends of the table. What thoughts do you have about how we can work better together?
Well, Alexa really nailed it on the partnerships. I mean, we could never have enough of that or be doing a good enough job with it. And I think connecting employers with housing providers more and more. And a great example, our friends at Disney recently invested heavily in the new Anaheim Housing Trust. I think it was $30 million. I heard things like that. So I think that we can find the money. Oftentimes, you can't find the political will for the projects. I think we need to look hard. You talked a lot about the development standards, but parking is kind of absurd, the amount of parking that you have to use. In Orange County is a pretty urban place now, over 3 million people. I know in our community, roughly 75% of the residents by survey have some type of remote work option. So I think driving it is becoming de-emphasized a little bit, so there's more potential there. You spoke about inclusionary zoning, which we see that as you're making one element or development community or a market rate buyer pay for somebody else. But I think there are better and worse forms of it, and I think if you have a reasonable in lieu fee, or there's a way to where you don't make the program so punitive that it just chases the developer out of there altogether. I mean, you have to be very careful about threading that needle where it's going to generate housing, the program that you're talking about. So those are just a few examples. I'm trying to think of anything else, but
that's great. Ed, you had your hand up.
Just two things. One is I was at Lambda Alpha, if anybody's a member of that. We heard from Disney's representatives at the Lambda Alpha meeting on Wednesday. And yes, $30 million, and it's basically unencumbered. Anaheim can do basically whatever it wants with this, as long as it's affordable housing, plus an $8 million more for parks and recreation. And it speaks to something that both my co-panelists have talked about, which is the stakeholder. You talked about stakeholders. The stakeholders that really matter are the large employers, because they have the means to create affordable housing for their employees, and they have the incentive to do so too, because people that work near their jobs are more productive, they spend less time in commuting, they don't work from home as often. That's another subject we could talk about. And so I think that's the kind of action that we need, and to empower large employers to play a bigger role.
I like that, Mike.
I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the costs. Alexa touched on it, but my understanding from the data we've heard, to build an affordable unit in Orange County is about $750,000 for one unit. In the Bay Area, it's over $1 million. It's like $1.2 million for one unit. So we have to kind of get over it about exactly what the housing looks like, and I mean, it needs to be respectable, clean, safe, all the right things, but maybe there's new forms, mini houses, I don't know what it is, but more flexibility, because it's kind of absurd the amount of money it takes to get one unit right now.
Well, and I also think you need to really look at some alternatives. And as a proud, longtime board member of the Orange County United Way, we've gone in a different direction, not necessarily building new structures and buildings, but using existing stock, empty apartments and so forth, which for $25,000, you can set somebody up. And we've been very successful in 6 years in housing over 1,100 individuals permanently through existing housing stock, which gets away from those just unfathomable numbers to build new permanent housing. So anyway, just a thought. I'm going to now turn to the audience. Our pledge is to have you out of here at 1:30, and we're going to stick to that. But do we have a question here? We have a question right here from the very august and Mr. Tim Rush right here. Tim, I got a microphone for you right here.
Okay, my question is that the comment was made that 94%, I think Mike Balsamo said 94% of the land in California is not built upon. And perhaps a great percentage of that, in fact, has been exempted from being able to be considered. You probably know better what that number is. But, of course, when I heard you say that 75% of the ranch essentially has been put off limits, that to me is a bit disturbing, because that's the problem. You're not going to solve our housing problem with infill development. That's a pimple on the elephant's behind. You've got to open up that 94% of the state's property in order to address this. I mean, we're just tinkering at the margins, thinking that we're going to solve it with infill housing. So,
Thank you, Tim, very much. Any response from anybody? Mike?
Well, the cars are getting cleaner. I think there shouldn't be this fear about, sprawl, affecting the climate so terribly. Most of the problem with the climate is the mobile sources or industrial activity, heavy shipping, these kinds of things. There's only 2 master plans beyond ours in the state of any scale. One is the 5-point Newhall plan, which is roughly 20,000 homes, and then maybe Tejon. Tejon still is not out of their CEQA trap. They would have 23,000 homes, but you're talking about maybe 50,000 homes total that are entitled left in California. That's it. And we barely build 100,000 homes in a year in the state. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not saying pave the whole state, because we have a beautiful state, but there needs to be some reasonable balance.
And just to talk, coordinated efforts between the counties, the state, and local governments as well, because if we take Tejon Ranch as an example, they're building in the next county, they're not building in LA County yet, because of the different regulations and restrictions in LA County versus when you hop over the border into Bakersfield, and I believe that's San Joaquin County. Don't quote me on that. Kern, yes, Kern. So having that coordinated effort would also go far.
Terrific. I think we have a question right here, and then one right here.
My name is Councilmember Janet Keel Conklin from La Palma.
Thank you for being here, by the way.
Oh, thank you for having me. Alumni of UC Irvine School of Social Science. Zot. Anyhow. So the question here is, I haven't heard us address veterans housing element, so I think that that's important, because we talk about homelessness, and is there anything that we can talk about, or is there anything that's provided for them?
Alexa, jump in there.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a huge opportunity that's coming down with the passage of Prop 1. We have over $1 billion in funding that's being set aside to assist our homeless veterans. But where the problem lies is it is unfortunate that we have to wait until our veterans are homeless in order to help them. And that is what we're finding with, in order for our veterans to get vouchers, they have to be homeless first to then get the voucher. And so we need a new system, right, to where when they're exiting the military, that we can give them a flexible housing voucher and place them in housing. But there is a huge opportunity, as I said, that is coming, starting in January with the Prop 1 funding that has set aside $1 billion throughout the state of California to assist with affordable housing, particularly permanent supportive housing. So that's housing to house our homeless veterans or those that are at risk of homelessness. But I agree with you.
I think that's important. I'm working with a veteran service officer locally, so I think it's important for us. And there's qualification behind that in terms of how disabled are you in order for you to get emergency housing. If you're not 100%, you don't get emergency housing.
Correct.
So I would like to talk to you about that. I think
Sure.
It's important to talk about veterans up there.
Yes.
Important topic, great question. Love the response in terms of the information. We have a question right here, and this will probably be the last one, and I'm going to turn back to the panel so we can finish on time.
My name is Denora, and I'm a local realtor, and I'm going to say a word that you probably won't like, ED, eminent domain. Have we thought about doing anything in the ways of eminent domain on a city or county or even state level? Because as I drive neighborhoods, I see vacant lots next to a church in the middle of a neighborhood, and you just think, gosh, how many houses can we put in this area? And that's just my question.
Any thoughts on eminent domain as a tool?
Well, it's a career suicide if you're a local elected official. I think, but what you're getting to, though, is the tension right now between local government, local control, and Sacramento in terms of the regional housing needs assessment, and what the state is beginning to insist that the locals provide, and it's not solved by any means. It's probably heading to some type of litigation down the road, but big problem in California.
Terrific. All right, well, thank you. I'm going to come back to the panel here. We have 10 minutes until we hit the appointed hour of 1:30. So I'm going to ask a question here, just sort of a quick response. But what is the one or two takeaways that you hope this audience leaves with today as they drive away in terms of things to think about as it relates to housing, things to consider that they can do, and what your hope is on this topic going forward? And I'm going to turn to you, Alexa.
Related to what Ed's been saying, this whole program, right, is I think the biggest takeaway for all of us in the room is that now we understand that this is a very complex problem with competing interests, and so we're going to need a compromise. Whether your interest is if you're environmentalist, or if your interest is you're a major employer or business, a local business owner, that we need to all come to the table and collaborate and compromise in order to reach a consensus and find a solution for housing. So that's what I would ask of everybody here.
Boy, that's the word of the year with the election less than 2 weeks away.
Collaborate and compromise.
Can we find ways to work together? Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of a takeaway or two?
Alexa really nailed it there. That's mostly what Ida was said. I think the partisan divide we've got on the national level right now, where it's just cutthroat and you can't like somebody if they're on the opposite side of you. We almost handle these housing and land use issues in the same way, in a community by community basis. It's cutthroat. We got to get away from it. If we really want to solve it, we've got to become more collaborative. We've got to relax maybe a little bit on our environmental ethos, just a touch, and then I think also really look to work with our nonprofit partners to provide the most resources to the folks that need them.
Terrific, thank you. Professor, before we dismiss class, you get the final word.
We're all truly blessed to be able to live in California. And we want to keep it that way, and we're not going to be able to keep it that way if everybody leaves and the people that we need to make our economy go leave because they can't afford to live here.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panelists a wonderful round of applause. Thank you, Ed, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Alexa, very much. And I'm going to give it back to the esteemed John Christensen. Here you go, John.
Hey, guys, hang tight here. I'm going to land the plane, and we're going to do a quick picture. All right, how about a big O.C. Warham hand for our panel? What a great job. A couple of things as we land the plane here and get you out of here. On your way out, please thank the Hyatt folks for hosting us today. This is the home of OC Forum for 2024, so thank them for the lunch and for today. I want to thank the Communications Lab folks for all that they did today in helping put this thing together. I will give you two things to put on your calendar. November 22nd is our next event. We only have two left. Hey, Scott. And it's going to be for the rollout of the Orange County Community Indicators Report. We're going to partner with our friends over at the Orange County Business Council. Should be a great afternoon. If you go to ocforum.org, you'll find all the information about tickets. And then, as was mentioned, I guess there's this election thing here in a couple of weeks or something. That, in December, we're going to do a post-election look at that and what do the results mean. So put that on your calendar too. So,
the room divided?
No. Kumbaya. All right. Thank you all for being here today. Have a great afternoon, a wonderful weekend, and drive safe on the way home. Take care.